Hi everybody. It's been some time that we have seen each other, and in today's class we shall take up a new topic pertaining to your syllabus, and the topic is some very fundamental concepts pertaining to ecology and ecosystems. Now these things have been well introduced to you in your lower classes, so practically it's just a revision of the things which we have done in the past. So to start with, as far as the word ecology is concerned, now this word ecology has been a result of a combination of two words, that is oikos, which means home, and logos, which means study. So practically the word ecology means the study of the earth's households. And the word ecology for the first time was coined by the scientist Ernst Haeckel. So please remember the name. His name is Ernst Haeckel, who coined the term ecology. Now, the ecology, if we try to define it, as I said, in very simple terms, it can be defined as the study of the earth's households. But to come into a more formal definition, ecology can be defined as the study of interrelationships and between living organisms and their surrounding environment. So please remember the definition, that is, it is defined as the study of interrelationships between living organisms and their environment. Now, keeping this definition of ecology in mind, let us come down to another term, that is ecosystems. Now, before I come down to the definition of ecosystems, we should first talk of what is a system. Now, if you think of a system, for example, if you think of your school or your college as a system, so they are defining that there are several departments in your school or in your college, and these departments work in a coordinated fashion. And because they work in a coordinated fashion, as a result of which the school or the college operates as a whole, and this is what we call as a system. So in the context of ecology, we can define a system as a group of several interacting components which operate together as a functional whole. So how do we define an ecosystem? An ecosystem is defined as a group of several interacting components which operate as a functional whole. Keeping this in mind, let us come down to the more formal definition of ecosystem. So if we are trying to define ecosystem, an ecosystem can be defined as a group of several interacting organisms which, along with their environment, operate as a system. So how do we define an ecosystem? It can be formally defined as a group of several interacting organisms which, along with their environment, operate as a system. Okay. Now, as I said, that the term ecology was coined by Ernst Haeckel. Likewise, the term ecosystem, for the first time, it was used by A.G. Tansley. So please remember these names. Ecology was coined by Ernst Haeckel, and ecosystem was coined by A.G. Tansley. Now, as far as the types of ecosystem is concerned, so grossly we can divide ecosystem into two very broad types. One is the natural ecosystem, and the other is the man-made ecosystem. So if we are talking of the natural ecosystem has no man-made or artificial inputs. So we do not interfere with these natural processes. That's what we call as a natural ecosystem. It can be a forest, it can be a desert, it can be an ocean. So these are all perfect examples of natural ecosystem. But whenever we talk of the man-made ecosystems, now as the name suggests, these man-made ecosystems will have a lot of human interference. There will be a lot of human inputs, and one of the best examples you can cite is as a cropland ecosystem. So a cropland ecosystem is a good example of a man-made or an artificial ecosystem. Another example which you can cite is an aquarium, which many of us keep in our homes, in which you have to feed the fish, you have to switch on the the oxygen pumps, etc. from time to time to maintain the equilibrium of the ecosystem. So this is the basic. These are the two basic types of ecosystems. One is the natural, and the other is the man-made. So as far as the natural ecosystems are concerned, as I said, that these will not include any human interferences. There are no man-made interferences or man-made inputs, etc. But in a in a man-made ecosystem, there will be critically a lot of human inputs. There will be a lot of human interferences. Now, if we are talking of these natural ecosystems, they can further be divided into terrestrial ecosystems. They can be divided into aquatic ecosystems. So the natural ecosystems, we are further dividing it into terrestrial and aquatic systems. Now remember, the terrestrial systems, these are land-based systems. So as I said, the terrestrial systems, these are the land-based systems. For example, the desert, the forests, the grasslands, these are all examples of the terrestrial ecosystems. And as far as the aquatic ecosystems are concerned, you can further divide them into freshwater ecosystems and saltwater ecosystems. Now, the freshwater ecosystems, as you know, rivers, lakes, ponds, etc., these are all freshwater systems. And the saltwater ecosystems will largely include your oceans, then your seas, the bays, etc., etc. Okay, so just recapitulating, overall the two types of ecosystems are natural and man-made. The natural ecosystems are further divided into the terrestrial ecosystems and the aquatic ecosystems. The aquatic ecosystems are further divided into your freshwater ecosystems and saltwater ecosystems, and the terrestrial ecosystems, you are dividing it into the forests, deserts, grasslands, mountains, etc., etc. Okay. Now, after talking about the types of ecosystems, let us move into the components of an ecosystem. That is, what are these ecosystems exactly composed of? What are the basic components? So, as far as the basic components of these ecosystems are concerned, they largely consist of the biotic components as well as the abiotic components. Now, whenever we talk of these biotic components, the biotic components chiefly include the living components. They will chiefly include the living components. And the abiotic components, as the name suggests, they will mainly include the non-living components. Now, whenever we are talking of these biotic components, now these biotic components, they include the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. Now, producers, as we all know, these largely include the green plants. These largely include the green plants, although there are some, photosynthetic bacteria also, which do have the ability to carry out photosynthesis, but producers will largely include the green plants. And these producers, they are autotrophs. Now, auto means self and troph means nourishing. So the producers, they are actually self-nourishing beings, the green plants, as you know that, which have the ability to carry out photosynthesis by utilizing the sunlight, by utilizing the carbon dioxide, the water, the minerals from the soil, and ultimately in the presence of chlorophyll, they put it all together in the presence of light, and that process is what we call as photosynthesis, whose end product is ultimately, the main end product ultimately is glucose. Okay. Now, as far as the consumers are concerned, now remember, all animals and fungi, they largely constitute the consumer group. So, these consumers, they are largely known as the heterotrophs. Hetero means other, troph means nourishing. So, the heterotrophs, as we all know, they are nourished by others. And lastly comes the decomposers. Now remember that the decomposers largely include the microorganisms, the fungi, the bacteria. So what is their major role in the ecosystem? Now in the ecosystem, we all know that living organisms are constantly dying. Their body parts are lying down on these ecosystems, and they are excreting, they are giving out various organic waste. Now the chief purpose of these decomposers is to break down the complex organic matter and thereby converting it into simple forms. And these decomposers are practically the recycling agents of nature. So whatever dies, whichever dead parts are available, whatever organic material or organic waste is available, they will constantly decompose it, break it down, putrefy it, and ultimately make these trapped nutrients once again available to the environment. So in a way, what we can say, that these decomposers like bacteria and fungi, they are chiefly acting as, what you can say, the principal recycling agents of the ecosystem. Okay. Now, as in every ecosystem, you must remember, as in the case of every organism also, one of the primary requirements is food, because food provides us with energy. So in an ecosystem, what we generally find that there is a sequential arrangement of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. So such an arrangement of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten is what we call as a food chain. So what is a food chain? A food chain is a linear or sequential arrangement of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. So remember, these food chains, they generally start with the producers and they move on to the primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and quaternary consumers. For example, if you think of a grass, deer, tiger food chain. So the grass is the producer, the deer is the primary consumer, the tiger is the secondary consumer. Or if you just extend your food chain slightly, say grass, rabbit, snake and peacock. So in that case, the food energy flows from the grass to the rabbit, which is the primary consumer. The rabbit in turn is eaten by the snake, which is the secondary consumer. The snake in turn is eaten by the peacock, which is the tertiary consumer, and obviously the grass is the producer. So overall, whenever we talk of these food chains can largely be divided into the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. Now, if you look at these grazing food chains, the grazing food chains begin from the producer and moves on to the primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary consumer and so on, as we have talked of the last two food chains, the grass, deer, tiger food chain, or the grass, rabbit, snake, peacock food chain. But if you look into the detritus food chain, now the word detritus means what you can say, some broken plant parts, animal parts, dead body parts, etc. This is what we refer to as detritus. For example, fallen leaves. Fallen leaves are one of the best cited examples of detritus. Now, the detritus food chain obviously begins with this detritus material, that is the dead and decomposing organic parts, and moves on to the detritivores. Now, what are detritivores? Detritivores are the organisms feeding on the detritus, and from the detritivore, the food chain will move on to their carnivores. From the detritivore, the food chain will move on to the carnivores. So once again, the detritus food chain begins with the detritus. From the detritus, it will move on to the detritivore, which feeds upon the detritus, and from the detritivore, it will move up onto their carnivores. Now, a good example you can cite of, say, a mass of fallen leaf litter is present on which some insects are feeding. So the leaf litter is the detritus. The insects feeding on the leaf litter, those become the detritivore, and then there are birds which feed upon these insects. So that becomes the carnivores of the the detritivores. So the two types of food chains which we have recognized are the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. Fine. Okay, but in nature it is very rare to find food chains. So in nature what you will find are food webs. In nature what you will find are food webs. So remember, when several interlinked and interconnected food chains, they form a pattern. So this interlinking pattern of several interconnected chains is what we call as a food web. Remember that? The interlinking pattern of several interconnected food chains is what we call as a food web. Okay. So that's it for today. And in our next lecture, I shall talk about how energy flows in an ecosystem. Thank you, and please keep following the lectures.